Welcome, everyone, and welcome to another, actually, Sunday edition of Relate Well Live with Dr. Rick Marks. I hope you've been having a great day today, and I hope that you will find this version of Relate Well Live hopefully inspiring and helpful. I do a lot of work. We just got done doing a 1-day intensive with a couple. Actually, it's a 2-day intensive. We did the first day today. And there were some issues there, alcoholism, sex addiction, and a lot of unhealthy behaviors on his part. And yet she has been terrified to open up and share. Matter of fact, she has been so hurt, she doesn't even want to be around him when she's getting a shower, those kinds of things, because he's been so, in a sense, oppressive in one level emotionally. We all do things that cause hurt and pain, and people have done things to us that have caused hurt and pain. And so today we're going to talk about why sharing negative emotions can be so scary and what you would need to do to transform that and make a difference. Now, if you are tuning in, be it through Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, all right? I got both cameras right here. And so I'm looking at my main camera in front of you. But here's what I do want. I'll be monitoring the comment sections, okay? What I would really, really enjoy is if you have a question or a comment or just want to say hi, please input your question, input your comment. Let's make this a dialogue on some level rather than me just going along and just lecturing and hopefully not boring you. But I'm the type of person that loves to engage with my audience, answer questions, and get comments and feedback. So if you're out there, let me know by saying hi so I can acknowledge you. And we're going to jump right into it. All right. In other words, have you ever felt like the things in your marriage have been taking place that it's almost too scary to be vulnerable? And there's, oh my goodness. Well, hello, Miss Carlson. Nice to see you. Hope you're warm up there in Wisconsin. Now, folks, have you ever gotten to the place where you came to a place with so much hurt, so much pain, you actually find it scary to be vulnerable? I mean, there's hurt, there's anger, there's pain, there's fear. And it's like if you were to take the risk to, hey, Miss Lily, welcome. Thank you. And I hope things are good and warm up there in Wisconsin, because they're in the 20s down here in Florida. So we got a little bit of cold down here. But have you came to that place where you go like, you know what? We're just so hurt, and there's so much hurt and pain and so much fear. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm not going to share anymore. It doesn't do any good. I do admit that that's actually true. There are some people who are not teachable at all. There are some people who just don't care how their spouse thinks or feel. They're just not open to feedback, right? And so you've learned not to share hurtful feelings. You've learned not to share your anger. You learn not to share your pain. You've learned not to share your struggles with your partner, okay? And so one of the things we want to talk about today is, why is it that we don't share? What's the fear about, all right? And then what can you do about it? What can you do about it? All right. And so we want to get past the hurdle, because a lot of time when it's scary, that's really about fear, right? And so we want to get over the hurdle, and we'll talk about some ways to do that. All right. Now let's jump in for a minute and talk about real quickly here some things that make it scary. All right. So I'm going to kind of go back my history and kind of bring this for you. Those who've kind of been with me watching our Relate Well lives or seen me, speak over time over the past few years, know that I came from a broken home where there was abuse. My dad struck with a cow prod. There was a lot of unloving language, criticized, put down by my dad and my stepmom. And so none of us 4 kids being raised in that home with my dad and my stepmom ever really felt valued or loved by them. And so we went into our adult world with a lot of hurt and pain. Now, I'll speak for me. For me personally, I learned early on that if I was to share a thought, I learned if I would share a feeling, if I shared an opinion, I was actually very quickly put down and criticized by my stepmother. I cannot tell you the number of times that she said things like, you won't amount to much. Why would you think that? Why would you feel that way? You shouldn't feel that way. Constantly invalidated. I didn't have the right to my own thoughts, and I didn't have the rights to my feelings, my emotions. And I went into my high school years then with a lot of hurt and pain and a lot of deep insecurities. A lot of deep insecurities. I went into the world with this sense of I have no value, that I don't matter, that I'm not lovable, okay? That I'm not good enough, that I'm inadequate. All that was messages sent. I'm going to repeat something I talk about a lot, but repetition is always good. You see, all humans have to have 4 questions answered early in life. When these questions are answered early in life, and they need to be answered only by your parents to you, and it's done by how they treat you on a regular basis, right? And so when a person treats you in a way as a kid, what your parents do, in a positive way, they're answering 4 questions unbeknownst to them. Here's the 4 questions that all humans as children need answered early in life in order to thrive as adults. The first one is, do I have value to you? Do I have value? You see, we all need to know that we have value. You see, that I have dignity, that there's value in who I am as a living person. Do I have value? The second question is, do I matter? Do I matter? The way you know that you matter is people will care about how you think and feel. People care that when you're sick. People care that you're hurt. People care that you're happy. When people care, it sends a message that you matter. It also lets you know that you have value. The third question we all need answered is am I loved and am I lovable? They're different. I can know that I'm loved, but not necessarily feel lovable, you see. We need to know that we're loved and we know that we're lovable. That's important. And the fourth question we need answered is, do I have a purpose? In other words, am I here on earth to exist, or am I here on earth for a purpose? Do I have something to give society, or at least to give those around me in my life? You see? And when you believe that you have value, when you believe that you matter, when you believe that you're loved and lovable, and you believe that you have a purpose, that you have meaning for being here, these people enter into their adult world pretty emotionally mature. They have strong self-esteem and self-worth because the environment has told them, based on the way they're treated, right, that you have value. These people tend to thrive on all social indicators. Sadly, that wasn't me. I left home at age 18 when I joined the Navy. I didn't believe I had value. I didn't believe I mattered. I didn't believe that I was good enough. I didn't believe that I was loved and lovable. I didn't believe I was adequate. And I didn't know if I had a purpose, because one of the messages I would get periodically to my stepmother over time was, you won't amount to much. You won't amount to much. Fortunately, I had some senior chiefs in the U.S. Navy who taught me otherwise. My senior chiefs in the Navy taught me that I had value, that I did matter, and that my thoughts and opinion matter to you. As my senior chief Bush would say, your thoughts and opinions matter to this man's Navy. I'd never heard that before. I always told that I didn't matter. And then I met my wife, Luella. Now, Luella comes from an alcoholic, broken home where there was a lot of craziness and a lot of brokenness, right? And so we loved each other, but we did not know how to love well. And we couldn't love well because we didn't know how to relate well. See that up there? Relate well. That's my curriculum. My curriculum is called Relate Well. Why? Because I had to learn how to relate well. In our Relate Well program, we actually teach people the fundamental skills and principles for bonding and attachment, emotional regulation, how to become a healthy, mature adult rather than stay an immature adult. We teach how to communicate. We teach you the fundamental skills to accomplish those things, you see. That's what we do in Relate Well, because we want people to relate well so they can love well. And when you love well, you can thrive. But when you don't believe you matter, then what happens is kind of two arching, if I can get two kind of ways. Now, these are not black and white. There's a fuzz between them, right? There's some gray between them. But I think you'll get the point. Either you live by fear and you operate out of fear, and so you either don't share what you think and feel, you hold it in because you're afraid of more rejection, you're afraid of abandonment, you're afraid of more criticism, you're afraid of more negativity, or you move it to anger. And in anger, you'll punish people for the way that you feel. You'll attack them for when they treat you in certain ways. You're defensive quickly in an angry, aggressive way, you see. So we tend to either run and deal with it through fear, or we tend to fight. Problem is, when you communicate negative feelings through fear and or anger, you're never really communicating well. You're really saying that I'm wounded and I've got to squash you, or I don't matter, so I'm not going to talk. You know, we all have negative emotions. I'm sure those listening to me right now, if you are following me, by the way, on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, join in, ask a question. Thanks, Jody, for that note right there. I see my cousin Patty had just joined us. You know, join in, ask a question. Let's have a conversation along the way here. All right, let's make this interactive for you. Now, you know, why do people find it difficult then to share negative emotions? Fear, ultimately. Fear. That's why I talk about, you know, the title here is, do you find it scary? Look, when you've been hurt enough, the brain has learned that, wow, if I keep touching that hot stove, I might get burned. And so the brain learns not to touch the hot stove. If you put someone down enough, invalidate their feelings, negate their personhood, deny their dignity or disrespect their dignity. If you live in that way, you're creating pain in them. You're creating anger in them. You're creating negative emotions for them. All right. Now, let's be honest. They can be mature enough and not let themselves go there. But be honest. When you treat someone a certain way, they're probably going to have negative emotions. That we get it like normal, right? People get angry. People feel rejected. And people feel abandoned. People feel misunderstood. People feel judged. People feel criticized. People feel helpless. People feel hopeless. But you understand, for me to take a risk to share with you that I'm struggling, that I feel betrayed, that I feel alone, that I feel unloved, that I feel like I don't matter, that I feel like I don't have any value, that I feel like I'll never measure up. To move to that level of emotional openness, listen to the phrase, to move to that level of emotional openness, I'll say it this way now, to become that vulnerable, it's scary. It's scary. See, whenever I took a risk early in my life, I was always met with criticism or put downs. So what did I learn? I learned not to share. I learned to hold those thoughts and things close. The problem was, by not sharing, by not opening up, I was actually harming myself. And then I meet Luella when I joined the Navy, get stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, who comes from an alcoholic abusive home. And she learned not to share feelings at all. She learned not to feel. She became analytic. Suck it up. Get over it. She'd actually baptize it religiously and go, just pray about it. Trust Jesus. That was her way of not to negating her pain, to not wanting to deal with her emotions. Why? They were too painful inside. And in her mind, that would mean she probably was weak. She didn't want to be weak. She needed to be strong. Or she said to me early in our marriage, I'm a survivor. I'll survive. And so the fear becomes the great obstacle. The fear It becomes the part you have to overcome. But to deal with fear, you have to take a risk. If I am going to take a risk and open up and share my negative feelings, share my hurts, share my fears, share my insecurities, that's a risk. What's the risk? Rejection. I risk rejection. I risk abandonment. I risk being judged. I risk being lonely. I risk a lot more deeper hurt. I risk being shamed. I risk being made to feel guilty. I risk being disrespected. I risk being invalidated. You get the idea. Whenever you have negative emotions and you've learned not to share over the years, and then you enter into a marriage where these things must be shared, intimacy is built and deepened through struggle. It is struggle that we struggle together. We struggle together, supporting each other and being a source of pleasure for each other. But if you learn, like I did and Love did, not to share negative emotions, then what's happening is you're not giving your total soul to another person. You're holding parts of yourself back because it's too much of a risk to be open and take my mask off. For me to take my mask off and let you see the real me. Do you get that? For me to take my mask off and let you see the real me, what you're going to see behind all that for most people is shame. Shame. Shame is a big reason people don't share. Shame says, I am broken. Shame says, I'm unworthy. Shame says, I am bad. Shame says, if you knew the real me, if I let you in and you saw the real me, my hurt, my pains, my fears, the things I've done that I'm not proud of, but if I let you see the real me, you won't like me. You'll see just how bad I am. And I can't handle that level of vulnerability because I can't handle the shame. I can't handle feeling the rejection, the criticism that will come with it. That's what I do. I continue to live in hiddenness. I continue to live in hiddenness. I continue to live with my mask, where I'm constantly smiling on the outside, but inside I'm falling apart. Eventually, long term, it will take its toll on you psychologically and emotionally. It leads to anxiety disorders. It leads to physical problems. It leads to mental health problems. It leads to addictions. All because the fear is present. Now, I grew up at home where you were taught not to share. I took that thinking into my marriage. And then in my transformation and her journey of healing, I married a woman who didn't care about how I felt either, because I took it personal, but reality was she learned not to share because in her home, she learned it wasn't safe to. So when I operate out of fear of not being known, right? I wanted to be known, but I was afraid to be known. Luella didn't care about being known because what she did, she became stoic, analytical. I took her analytical side. Her stoic side is indifference, as I don't care. And because I would interpret that stoic analytical side as she didn't care about me, I learned not to share with her. And then I realized if I am going to heal, if I'm going to become, in my mind, the man I was designed to be by God, and I was become really an expert in healthy relationships, right? An expert in healthy relationships. Hang on just a minute, folks. Sorry about that. I have this light thing here in my room that if I don't move around enough, it doesn't pick up the arm wave, it actually goes off. So that's what I get for sitting still too long. All right. So anyways, so let's go back. If I was to take a risk to start sharing Llewellyn my hurts and fears, who didn't believe she had any because she was stoic, right? I interpreted all of that as you don't love me, that I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. And I'll never forget the first time. I now call it, I got my voice. See, I wasn't allowed to have a voice. But I remember the first time I got my voice. And as I was learning from my mentor, Dr. Lori Gordon and others, I needed to speak my truth. Listen, I needed to speak my truth in a loving way. Not through pain, and not through anger, and not through fear. I need to speak my truth in a healthy, loving, mature way. And if I would speak my truth in a healthy, loving, mature way, then I was honoring myself. Because see, you can't dishonor yourself. You got to love you. As you can't love other persons if you don't love yourself. You know, the Bible talks about love your neighbor as yourself. A husband who loves his wife loves himself. Well, to the degree that you don't own up and honor your own thoughts and feelings, in one sense, you're saying, I don't love and respect myself. You need to love and respect yourself in a humble, mature way, not with arrogance and haughtiness. So I had to start getting my voice. I'm telling you, it was scary. But I'll tell you what I did. Luella wasn't learning all this back in those days that I was transforming my life 20-something years ago. And so I knew if I was to share what I thought, it would be different. She wasn't used to it. But I had to do it in a way that was respectful. Now, in Relate Well, we live by 4 principles. Always live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy, or what we now call HREG. H equals REG. Humility equals respect, empathy, and goodwill. And that becomes the fundamental of our program process in healthy relationships. You see, we believe that you as an individual need to become a person that lives a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. And when you become that person, you will be loving in all aspects of your life because love always treats people with goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. Pride will kill all that off. So then, what I had to do is I had to take the risk. Remember, by sharing my thoughts or feelings with her, I was risking rejection because I've been rejected before when I made attempts in the past. But then I realized I can't do that. I've got to speak up and share. And here's what I did. I actually prepared her brain for the conversation. So what I used to do was this. Honey, I need to share something with you. And I'd say this. I go, honey, I need to share something with you, but I don't want you to take it personal. It's not your issue. It's actually mine. Did you get that? That was a phrase I used. Honey, I need to share something with you, but don't take it personal. It's not your issue. It's mine. What I was actually doing was telling her lower brain, don't get defensive because I'm owning what's taking place in this moment when I'm about to tell you. That allowed her brain to feel safe and secure, which gave her the ability to just listen and care. And then I would say, I notice that when this happened, my brain interpreted it as that. I don't know if you meant this, but that's how my brain sees it. Would I be right? So I didn't do it as I'm telling her this is what she does. I'm saying this is what my brain told me or is telling me based on what that meant. And when you did that, my brain says it means this. Would that be right? You know what I found out? 8 times out of 10, she goes, well, no. I go, great. Because I know if I don't tell you what I'm feeling inside or thinking inside, then I'm going to ruminate on it. I'm going to ruminate on it. And if I ruminate on it, I promise you, moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day, it just builds negative energy in me, more resentful, more hurt, more pain, and I'm doing it to myself. And what I learned was I had to have the courage to face my fears and that my fear, what? Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear being all of that. I had to face the fears so that And facing those fears, what I actually found, there was nothing to be afraid of. Fear is debilitating. Now, the brain has to have two things in order to bond to another person. The brain has to have two things to bond to another person. So if you're taking notes, here they are. In order to bond emotionally to another person, you have to have emotional openness and physical closeness. Whenever you're triggered into lower order brain, fight, flight, or freeze, you're actually emotionally shut down. You're emotionally closed. So your brain won't bond to a person because it's in a defensive posture. It's in a threat state, right? We call it the stress response of the brain. And so you've got to be emotionally open. To be emotionally open means you need to be present and centered to yourself and others. That's a choice to be emotionally open. And when you are emotionally open, to someone, your brain wants to draw close physically. All right. And this is true of any relationship. You want to build a friendship with a guy friend, you're going to sit across the table. You're not going to sit 20 feet apart. Because you begin to emotionally open, you actually find yourself moving closer to each other. Why? The brain has to have emotional openness and physical closeness. But when someone is a threat to you, your brain shuts down with them emotionally, and instinctually you just distance from them. You pull away. Why? Because the brain does not want to be close to someone that it feels threatened by. And so fear will keep you from being emotionally open, and fear will keep you from connecting physically. It's the nature of fear. Why? Because you're feeling rejection, abandonment, all of that. So, real story, I like to share a lot of my own journey. There was a period of time in my marriage, it was the worst time ever. I mean, it was the worst. 2004, 5, and 6. We had probably the worst 3 years of February, 38 years of marriage. The best 38 years of her life so far. All right. Mine too, by the way. So anyways, in that period of time, that our marriage was really at its worst, if you will. We were very disconnected. Divorce was never an option. We were going to make it through, but I'm telling you, we had a lot to work through. And I was working for Dr. Lori Gordon, and I was learning about bonding. I was still traveling, speaking on marriage and those kind of things with her. And even though my marriage was bad, I'm still teaching on marriage. I think you can do that, and because I knew one day we would be past all this and we would work through it. And we eventually did. There are a lot of stuff to work through over that period of time. And so I remember one night, we're about as far apart as you can be. You can feel it. I mean, we're miles apart emotionally, yet we're laying right next to each other in bed at night. She's got her back to me and she's sleeping. I feel so distant and disconnected. I'm here to tell you about how fear works. And in my lay there at night in the dark, I think I turned the light off around 10. For 4 hours, folks, I kept thinking emotional openness, physical closeness. All you got to do is roll over because you have to have those two things to bond. I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. Why? Because something in my head said, well, if you do, she's going to reject you. She's going to push you away. She's not going to want you close to her. She wants you away from her. All of that is in my head. Every bit of it is in my head. 4 hours later, just after 2 a.m, folks, I kid you not, I'm laying there, hadn't slept for 4 hours, 2 a.m, stewing over this, afraid to just, here she is, I mean, that far away, that far. And I got mad at myself. Most of my life was relegated by fear, deeply insecure. But I got so mad at myself for being afraid for 4 hours. The anger that I was mad at myself for being afraid. I was so angry that I was afraid, it immobilized. That anger mobilized me. And you know what I did? I rolled over and I put my arm around her, waiting for the rejection. The rejection I knew was coming that kept me away for 4 hours. Let me tell you what she did. When I rolled over, emotional openness, physical closeness, got to have it to bond. Can't have it. Fear will rob you from it. I rolled over, put my arm around her. She took my hand. And then I was really mad at myself because I thought, I just wasted 4 hours of sleep from fear. And the answer was yes, I did. Fear is debilitating. Fear is debilitating. You must be able to share your negative feelings, to share your fears, to share your hurts, to share the things you're angry about. But you have to share them with goodwill and respect. You have to share them in non-accusatory ways. You cannot share them in a way that shames your partner, that belittles your partner, that puts your partner down. You must share them with goodwill and respect and in a caring way. And when you learn to be mature enough to share those things in a loving, caring way, you are becoming emotionally mature. Because emotionally mature people can do that, where emotionally immature people won't, you see. Look, folks, the wrong way to deal with this is by overpowering your partner emotionally, talking them to death, invalidating their views, putting them down. You're not going to get them to open up to you. Matter of fact, you're actually convincing them not to open up to you, and you're further convincing them that they are right about you. I always say it this way: never live in such a way that you create conversation in somebody's mind. Don't treat people in such a way that you start to create conversations in their mind they never wanted to have. Don't create a conversation in a person's mind because the way you treat them, when they now have to start thinking, do you love me? You create that conversation based on the way you've been or the way of being. Don't live in such a way you create conversations that people never want to have. You see, and if you struggle with fear, the key is take a risk. Now, let's be honest. You only take a risk for people that you feel are safe. So when Llewellyn started taking risks with me, that's a risk. The question I need to ask is, do I honor that risk? Do I honor it? Or am I going to put her down and validate her, which will only teach her what? Don't open up to him anymore. So I believe we train people, we teach people how to be around us. You do. You teach people how to be around you. Why? Because of how you are as a way of being. What would you expect? If you do something to somebody on a regular basis, right? And they walk out of your life and you're bothered by that, I go, why would you be bothered by that? You see, if you demean someone, devalue someone on a regular basis over time, and they walk out of your life, I go, why are you bothered by that? If you treat someone in a way that devalues them long enough and they figure out you really don't value them, that you really don't love them, you probably should expect them to walk out of your life. Why are you bothered by it? Your behavior said, I don't value you. Your behavior said, I don't want you in my life. So you should be rejoicing that they're leaving based on the way you've treated them all those years. Never treat people in a way that gets them to have to ask questions they never want to ask. Should I stay? Should I leave? Does he love me? Does she love me? I don't know. It's confusing. If you live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, empathy, then you're always sending the message, I value you. You're always sending the message, you matter. You always send the message that you're loved and lovable. You'll always send that message because living a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy, what we call HREG, H equals REG, living life from HREG, says more about who you are as a person, your maturity, your security, your confidence, your self-worth, your self-esteem. It says more about who you are. When you aren't that way, that says a lot about who you are as well. What if we begin to take risks and share our hurts and feelings? And when our spouses take the risk to share hurts and feelings, what if you honored their thoughts and feelings? You don't have to agree with them. But what if you honored those fears? What if you honored those hurts? What if you honored that anger, honored that concern with goodwill and respect? What you'd actually be teaching them is, I care. I care. You matter. Your thoughts matter. Your opinion matters. Your perspective matters. It's my personal belief. you can turn around any relationship at any time just by learning to live a life so that people would feel safe to take the risk and share with you. Live in such a way that you are a source of pleasure. Then people who fear opening up will take the risk because we're willing to take a risk for people we can trust. You do not take a risk for people you cannot trust. It's basically that simple. I hope maybe in some small way this has been beneficial for you, And so one thing you can start doing today is maybe ask your partner, how do I come across to you in conflict? How do I come across? Do I come across as respectful or disrespectful? Do I come across in a way that helps you feel safe to open up and share with me? Ask that question. If you ask it, do not get defensive. Because you ask a question about about yourself from someone and they answer it, you shouldn't be getting defensive. If you don't want to know, don't ask. But if you'd like to know, it might be an interesting perspective you don't have of you. I learned a long time ago, the way I think I come across is not the way I do come across. The way I think I'm being experienced is not the way that I am being experienced. And what people do is they defend how they think they are and believe they are. But in the end, it's how you are that ultimately matters. I hope this has been helpful for you. We got a Relate Well launch coming up here during National Marriage Week. You can go to thecouplescommunicationchallenge.com, thecouplescommunicationchallenge.com, and register there for our upcoming Couples Communication Challenge, the week of National Marriage Week, which is the 7th through the 14th. Join me there. We'll be teaching some things that will inspire you in your marriage, and particularly if you're conflicted. And we will then have a wonderful offer at the end of that to help move things forward if you so desire. This is Dr. Rick Marks with another Relate Well Live. Have a great week, everyone.